Hi everyone. Hey, it's Vaughn. Spirit of Health. We are live and we are going to do a Q&A. This is number 6, I think. So we're doing one a week. And this one's on the ketogenic diet. And I wanted to talk about the ketogenic diet because it's a big topic right now. I have a blog that's going to be coming out in the next week or so. And it's actually going to be about the myths and dangers of the ketogenic diet. So that might be a surprise to a lot of people. Ketogenic diet's probably the biggest, hottest thing going on out there. Everybody's into keto. Everybody's taking keto products. And I just want to start, before I get into the questions, because I don't have a lot of questions, I just want to start with saying that, you know, we're all learning, we're growing, we're trying to figure things out. We always try to look at things from God's design perspective. I have that in my blog as always. And, you know, I definitely, as a healthcare practitioner, have recommended people do lots of fats and do keto, and you research the history of it, and it all sounds good. But I also want to be open to change and be open to doing what's best for people when we learn new information. And so, you know, keto is one of those things where, again, it's beneficial to some people. A lot of people rave about how it's changed their life. And so I don't want to sit here and just talk about how, you know, it's the worst thing ever. But I do want people to be educated, as I have been educated, on what is really happening in your body with keto. And is this really a good thing to do long term? And is it as great as everybody talks about it? Because what I see as a healthcare practitioner, I have people coming in here saying, I did keto and I feel horrible. I've been trying to eat a high-fat diet and I feel heavy and tired and sluggish. I know personally I don't do well eating lots of fats. My wife doesn't do well eating lots of fats. Lots of people I see come in here don't do well eating lots of fat. Yet what have we been told, you know, in health for the last, I don't know, decade about how fats are crucial and you need to eat tons of fats. And so I just really want you to think about this. If you're going to watch live, you know, ask questions. Hopefully you can chime in with any questions. But read my blog on it because I kind of go through some of the myths, some of the dangers about keto. And hopefully we'll be able to cover a little bit of that as we go through the Q&A. So again, I recommended this in the past. I don't really anymore from what I've learned. I think it's a little bit abnormal actually to God's design of the body and of the food that he gave us, and it's another one of those extreme, like what I talked about in the blog is that the issue is that we're struggling with our health as a culture, and so we're looking for answers. We're looking for answers for weight loss. We're looking for answers for diabetes. We're looking answers for these things, and so that's why we kind of get into these programs that are really, honestly, I mean, I hate to use this term, but I just think it's true. I mean, it's going to be a fad just like anything else. Once people learn that it's not the be-all, end-all answer to all of your problems, it's going to go away to some extent, where some people still use it here and there if they think it benefits them, but it's not going to be this worldwide popular craze. All these fad diets come and go. And what I mentioned in the blog is the only fad diet that is going to be here forever is the one God originally gave us in the Garden of Eden that we've completely strayed away from. And trust me, keto and eating 80% fat was never part of God's original plan, period. Like, it's just that simple. So again, I know some people are benefiting from it short term, but it's not normal to do long term, and it's not normal based on how our bodies are designed to function. So let me start with Jennifer Griffin's question, which I loved. This was the first question that popped up, and I'm like, wow, what a great question. So Jennifer said, how much fat should we be eating percentage-wise on a daily basis? Will too much fat in our system cause blood sugar issues? And that is really an amazing question. Because to answer your question, I'm going to give you a percentage, but this is rough. Again, I really it's so hard for me to give people like this perfect advice because everybody's so different. Everybody's on their own journey. Some people are single. Some people as a mom trying to figure this out with 6 kids. You know what I mean? Like it's there's such a wide spectrum of people trying to figure out what to do and how to eat. But in general, I recommend people eat a low-fat diet. So what I mean by that is not going out and buying products that say low fat on them. I'm talking, when I say eat a low, let me put it this way. I don't think in our world today and with the foods we're eating, we don't have to intentionally try to eat lots of fats, because there's so many fats inundated in our culture today. Like it's impossible not to eat a few nuts and seeds, or to put a little olive oil based dressing on your salad, or to eat some olives on your salad, or to put a little avocado on your salad. Like that's just normal today. So let's just say, do not try to put tons and tons of fat in everything that you do, because A, we just don't need it, because we're not active enough to burn off all the fuel and the energy that the body would have to produce to burn off that amount of fat. But if you want a rough percentage, and again, there's books out there. There's an 80-10-10 book that's written, my gosh, I think that was written in the 80s. It's about eating 80% sugar, starches, carbs, and 10% protein, 10% fat. That's an old book. There's other people out there like Dr. Morse teaching about cleansing with raw fruits and vegetables. The other point I always make is, if you look at any of the healing programs, like you can spend lots of money and go to Hippocrates Health Institute and Optimum Health Institute and Gerson Therapy, and for the most part, it's a no-fat or extremely low-fat diet. And the reason is because fat blocks the detoxification efforts of the body. And so if you want a percentage, I would say 10 to 15 max. Our bodies are designed very similarly to animals in nature, and animals in nature are strong, they're healthy, their hearts work good, and their brains work good, and they don't eat fat. Like they just don't. There's some fat in milk for the first year of their life, and then after that, they eat greens and herbs and leaves and twigs and berries and fruit, and they do great. And so we're not designed that much different. Read Ecclesiastes 3:17. Like it's just God's creation and design. And so I think this whole thing about like we have to eat tons of fats is in and of itself erroneous. And again, I'm not saying there's not some benefits to having some fish or having a fish oil once in a while or eating some olives. I'm not saying that. I'm saying the excessive amount of fats is a problem. And so we want to talk about why. So percentage-wise, like I said, 10%, 15% max. Think of how different that is than keto. 70%, 80%, it's outrageous. I mean, unless you're like running a marathon every day, like you could never possibly burn that much fuel and that much energy in the body. And so she asked, will too much fat in our system cause blood sugar issues? Absolutely. And there's a guy, his name's Cyrus. I can't remember his website. It's a diabetes website. I watched his video. It totally blew my mind. He's super expert and knowledgeable in this stuff. But he talks about the real problem with weight, the real problem with insulin resistance, the real problem with diabetes, the real problem with blood sugar issues is actually fat, too much fat in the system. Because what it does is it gums up the body and it gums up the cells. And the cells need sugar for energy. The main fuel source for the human body is sugar. And the best source of sugar for the human body is fruit sugar. And so every cell of the body needs sugar. Your brain constantly is pulling sugar out of your bloodstream to feed your brain. And so what happens is if you eat a high-fat diet, there's so much energy in the body that the cells are trying to burn off and use, like think Krebs cycle, mitochondrial function, energy production in the body. There's so much that the body's trying to figure out how to turn all that fat into energy, that when you eat sugar, when you eat a carb, the cells say, no, thank you. Like, I think the joke I put in my blog is there's no room for you at the end. So it's like, there's no way for the sugar to get into the cell because there's so much fat and there's so much energy that's already needed to be burned by the body. There's no way for the cells to uptake and utilize the sugar, which should be the main fuel source for the human body. So what really causes insulin resistance and diabetes and all these issues is the combination of a high-fat, high-sugar diet. It's the donuts, the French fries, the muffins, the pizza. This is what causes diabetes, not fat in and of itself, not sugar in and of itself. And I think this is where we've gotten confused. This is where I got confused. It's sugar's the bad guy or fat's the bad guy. It's the processed standard American diet of a high-fat, high-sugar, put on top of that a sedentary culture that's not exercising. That is your recipe for diabetes, insulin resistance, weight gain, et cetera, et cetera. So the answer isn't just eating healthier fats. And that's what keto says. Well, fats are great for you. Just eat healthy fats and eat tons of them and all is well. Well, again, that's not the main fuel source for the body. Let me tell you the biggest danger of that right there. When your body's so saturated with fat and all this energy it can't burn off, when you come off of keto, and talk about yo-yo diets and how women especially struggle with diets and the rebound effect after a diet, all of a sudden you've eaten this high-fat diet, all this energy the body can't burn. As soon as you start eating any sugar or carb after that, you blow up. Because your cells can't intake the sugar and the carb that you've just eaten because of all the fat in the system, and so then it gets stuck in the system. Okay, this is when the body starts storing it as weight. This is the insulin resistance. This is like the body's continuing to produce insulin because the sugar can't get metabolized into the cell. So do you see kind of what's going on here? This is why I said keto's not smart if we understand the biology and the chemistry of how the human body works. So to answer your question, will fat in the system cause blood sugars issues? Absolutely 100%.
We have Debbie chiming in from Odessa, Missouri, and she's asking, she's asking, I heard if you have no gallbladder, you're not supposed to be on this diet.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Debbie. Yes. In general, I don't think anybody should be on this diet. But if you have, this has been one of my biggest arguments to the high-fat diet for years. I've never recommended a high-fat diet. I mean, I understand staying away from sugars and starches and carbs, and we've kind of talked about that sometimes. But people have lymph blockages. People's livers are congested. People's gallbladders are congested. They're not metabolizing and processing fats very well. I learned this the hard way when I went and I got all excited about the GAPS diet, and I went and got certified as a GAPS practitioner, and I started putting people on the GAPS diet, and 2 out of 3 people said, what are you doing to me? I feel worse than I felt when I came to see you. That's not what I'm hoping for as somebody who's trying to guide and help people with their health, right? And I realized this high-fat diet was disastrous for the liver, for the gallbladder, for lymph blockages. And people are sick out there because their organs are congested and gummed up. People need to cleanse. People need to detox. You can't do that on a high-fat diet. I mean, I don't know where this honestly even started, that we've gotten on this kick of like this high-fat, high-protein diet is somehow going to be healthy for us. Now, again, is short term, you just want to lose a little bit of weight, great. But just be cautious. When you go back to eating sugar, starches, and carbs, you could be in trouble because you better be exercising. You better be burning off all that fat that you just consumed. Otherwise, your cells are not going to be ready to take in that sugar. So, yes, any kind of congestion issues, this diet's not good. All right. And then Jennifer followed up. Jennifer Griffin said, I find that if I eat too much fat, even from plants, avocados, nuts, and seeds, I have issues with my blood sugar, especially the next day. I try to stay below 30%, but I don't know if that's a good amount. So I think we kind of talked about that, and we talked about why. You're putting, if you put fruit in your body, it might not last very long, but it's quick fuel, quick energy, quick in, easy out, life is good. Now you might need to do more because it's quick burning, and fat is slow burning. And again, a little bit of olives or olive oil or fish or avocado, a little bit of that's good. It's a slow burning, nice fat. Stop bombarding the body with 70% fat. You are in big, big, big trouble. Like I said, unless you're an Eskimo shivering in the cold at 20 degrees below zero, which is probably the only people who really need a high-fat diet, or somebody who's exercising like absolute mad, you can't possibly burn off that much fat to where when you do eat sugars or starches or carbs, that can actually be utilized and metabolized in the body. So I hope that makes sense. All right, Susanna Satterley. She says, what's the difference with intermittent fasting to achieve ketosis versus a ketogenic diet? So I addressed this in the blog a little bit too. So the ketogenic diet, of course, is eating the high 70% fat diet, 10 to 15% protein diet. I mean, it's a high fat, high protein diet. Completely opposite, completely contrary to every cleansing, healing diet that's out there. So again, I don't know how it got so popular because it's not a cleansing, healing diet. But eating the ketogenic diet, I definitely feel is dangerous long term. It's unnecessary. I talk about how it's contrary to God's design because he gave us lots and lots of fruit trees. I mean, you know how many apples grow on one tree in one season? It's like thousands. It's crazy. So we have an abundance of fruit. We have an abundance of vegetables. And the amount of avocado trees and coconut trees compared to fruit trees, you can't even compare. So like, if we just look at creation, we should look at the balance there. So intermittent fasting, and this is what I kind of talk about in the blog, is this why I feel like this is abnormal. Like, I love God's design of the human body. So God designed the body to need sugars as a main fuel source, but God has a backup plan for if you're fasting or if you're in a season of famine. So let's say there's no food. So the body does go into this state of ketosis. So again, the body's main fuel source is sugar. And there's different sources of sugar. Of course, we're not going to get into that today, but fruit sugar would be your best source because it's quick energy and also it doesn't require insulin. And so great for diabetics is whole fruit and avoiding the insulin-dependent carbohydrates. But what happens is when the body doesn't have sugar as its main fuel source, the liver starts to produce ketones, which is the emergency replacement fuel to keep our brains working and to keep our body functioning. It's not the ideal way. It's not how it's supposed to work. It's the emergency backup plan. Now, when you're fasting, it's great because you're not eating a ketogenic high-fat diet. You're fasting. And when you're fasting, your body goes into ketosis. And you know what happens? Your body starts cleansing, healing, eating up old, sick, dead, diseased tissue, cleansing metabolic waste out of your system. Like, going into ketosis through fasting is what heals the body. Going into ketosis through eating a ketogenic diet is putting your body into an abnormal, high-fat state where you can't possibly burn off all that, and long-term has very, very negative consequences. One of the other things people are doing is they're taking these products that are ketones. Now, it's funny because, it's such a big deal. People are coming to me, like, trying to get me to jump on the ketogenic, train, because I'm sure there's multi-level stuff out there, and then people are sending me products. And I honestly had a check in my spirit from the beginning of the whole ketogenic diet thing. And I was into, like, hey, eat fats, healthy fats, avoid breads and pastas, and, like, to some extent I still believe that. But, even with that, I had a check. And so I wanted to find out, where are these ketones from? You researched it on the internet. What are the sources of the ketones? It's a chemical produced in your liver. It's not a natural substance. So if you're taking ketone products, you're taking a chemical. You're taking a man-made chemical that somebody's making money off of, and, like, you want that to be your answer to your health issue or your weight loss plan or your diabetes plan or whatever. And again, we don't understand all these things. And if you're doing it and you're getting benefit, like, that's okay. But I really want you to understand what's really happening, and what you're really putting in your body is a synthetic man-made chemical. Nobody could tell me what ketones are derived from. And when I would ask people who are selling me these things, what are the ketones from? No, you can't even answer the question. So, like, if you're selling a product and you can't even answer a question on what your product comes from, I don't think that's ideal. I think you should be questioning, the products that we're taking. So I hope that answers that. Sharon Skeel, this is my mama-in-law in Hawaii. She said, good topic, ketogenic diet versus healthy fats, ketogenesis versus carbs, Krebs cycle. So, Yeah, I kind of addressed that a little bit, but basically, like the Krebs cycle is the process of the cells producing energy. It's oxidizing things to produce energy, and that can be fats and proteins and sugars and different things. But basically, the more fat you eat that's overloading the body, that your body can't utilize because you're not maybe exercising enough, or you're just eating way more fat than the human body needs, it's gonna it's gonna slow that process down. It's gonna slow down the Krebs cycle because of all the fat that you don't need. And so that's why Jennifer Griffin said, I notice that I have issues with my blood sugars after I eat too much fat. I notice myself and other people I've worked with that we feel heavy after we eat a lot of fat. We just feel like blah. And again, it's because the body doesn't need it. And it's not its preferred source. Now, if you don't have major liver issue, gallbladder issues, lymphatic system issues, you're exercising a lot, I'm not saying there aren't people that can benefit from this short term. Maybe you can use it for weight loss short term. If you're exercising a lot and not going totally crazy with the fats, can it be beneficial? Sure. Just saying again, it's not ideal long term. So Leslie Dawkins says, I struggle with feeling hungry throughout the day. It's been recommended that I follow more of a ketogenic diet and I increase my fat intake. During the day, I typically have to eat every 2 to 3 hours to avoid feeling hungry, anxious, low on energy. Are there recommendations for regulating hunger if increasing fat consumption might not be the best answer? It's a really good question, Leslie, and I don't think you're alone. I think there's a few thousand people that would ask this same question. I've struggled with this. I see people in here all the time that struggle with this. Here's what I've learned. And there's not an easy answer to this. I'm going to give you a couple of ideas, but basically, the healthier your body and the more energy that's in your body, the longer you can go without needing food. And so that's kind of an indicator. If like I have to eat every hour, every 2 hours, every 3 hours, there's a problem going on in your body metabolically that your body's constantly needing a fuel source all the time. And so let me tell you what would help with that. Now, fat is a more long-sustaining fuel, and so I understand why people say, hey, eat some more fats, because that can give you more longer sustainable energy. Okay, and that's okay to some extent, but I would never, again, recommend a high-fat diet or a ketogenic diet, especially a high-fat, high-protein diet, which is what the ketogenic diet ends up being. Couple of things you want to look at. One is your adrenals. So you can research adrenals. I've done videos on adrenal fatigue. A lot of people start taking our adaptogen power blend or the great adapter or putting a little sea salt in their water, and they start feeling good. They start having energy, and they notice those food cravings and the blood sugar fluctuations go away. The other quick energy fuel source that can help you immediately is fruit. And if you feel like you need to eat every 2-3 hours, that's okay, but sometimes just an apple or just a grapefruit or just some berries can satisfy that, and then that's great. A lot of times the problems with the complex starches is you eat it and you feel good when you're eating it, and then you crash. So again, this depends on your activity level. If you eat fruit, you won't get a crash, it'll give you energy. So if you have to eat fruit every 2-3 hours, that's okay because you'll never crash. If you eat bread or pasta or cereal, it'll feel okay when you're eating it, but you might feel sluggish afterwards. And the reason is it's more sugar than your body can utilize in that moment. So if you're active and you work a physical job, I have a friend who's a roofer, and he's like, I can eat, carbs and I don't get tired because he's out working, he's physical, he's sweating. That's different than if you're eating carbs and you're not physical, you're not active. So I hope that makes sense. So let me tell you what you really need if you're tired and you need to eat every 2 to 3 hours. Fruit is a quick snack. Exercise and sunshine. I know it's the basics of the basic, but it's true. When people exercise, they feel energized, they feel amazing, they don't feel like they need coffee and donuts. They feel like they feel amazing and they just need an apple or a juice. At least I know that's how I feel when I exercise. And so if you're active, you're going to have more energy. If you're getting in the sun, you're going to have more energy because that's our biggest natural fuel source or light source is the sun. I mean, that's what makes fruits and vegetables grow, right? So if you get outside more and you walk outside and you eat more fruit, you can actually get healthier without bogging your system down with a heavy fat diet. So that's what I would recommend you do. The other thing that you can do that's kind of a tweener, I call it a tweener, that's not sugars and starches and carbs like the complex carbs that can cause a crash, and it's not having to go to eating heavy fats that can be too much, is root vegetables. So root vegetables are a starch or a complex carb, but if you stick to like sweet potatoes and carrots and parsnips and make a stew out of that or a soup out of that, that is a little more substance that won't really cause necessarily a crash. So that's a good little tweener. You know, don't jump to eating like breads and pasta, but you could do more sweet potatoes and carrots, and that could help you. But again, fruit is the ideal source. I just understand a lot of times with the fruit, it's like, I ate a piece of fruit and an hour later I'm hungry. Well, I understand that, but you can just eat more fruit. It ain't that big of a deal. All right. So Eva Phillips, Eva or Eva, I'm sorry, I'm not sure which one it is. A friend of mine is diabetic, said keto's helped him significantly. His triglycerides numbers improved. Could keto be beneficial only for diabetics? So I kind of answered that earlier, but I'm just going to clarify this. Keto's going to make your blood numbers look great. The problem is that when you're not going to be on keto your whole life. I hope not. Because eventually being on keto your whole life, you know, you can watch this guy's video. I talked about Cyrus at this, I can't remember the website. It's a Heal Diabetes or something like that. But he talks about all the side effects of eating a high-fat diet long-term. And it's bad. It's really, really bad. Because they've actually done studies and proven it. But short-term, the numbers are going to look good because you're not eating sugars and starches and carbs. The problem is you're not going to eat that diet your whole life. And so as soon, again, just like I said before, you've got all this heavy fat in your system, your blood numbers look good. As soon as you start at all eating anything that we'd even consider a halfway, like quote-unquote normal diet, or even a biblical diet or a plant-based diet, or even just adding in potatoes and quinoa and rice and basic things, his numbers are going to be a mess. Because, again, he's messed up his cells. His metabolism's messed up because the body's kind of living in this ketogenic state. And as soon as he starts eating those foods again, his body can't process them. And he's in a worse place than he was before. Because now you got insulin resistance and blood sugar issues and weight gain. And, again, this is why I think so many people go on these, like, hardcore... I see it especially with women a lot of times go on these no sugar, no starch, no carb, strict diets. They lose the weight, and as soon as they start eating, boom, they just get so frustrated. They're mad, you know, just because like they feel like all the weight comes back, and it's because you haven't actually learned like balance and what the cells need long term. So yeah, it looks good short term. It's bad long term, and as soon as you come off keto, it's going to be bad. And so what you want to do if you're on keto, this would be a great thing. I should put this in the blog. If you're on keto, reduce your fats. Don't have to necessarily stop eating it. Reduce your fats down to like 10-15%, like I said. Start incorporating in more fruits and vegetables and greens, making fruit your main fuel source. You can still achieve your goals. You can still lose weight. The problem is a lot of times is people go keto because they want to go hardcore and lose weight. And when they're eating, they struggle with eating, honestly. I mean, they like the breads and the pastas and the crackers and the chips and the muffins, and it's just like, and you're kind of out of control with the eating. And so you're going to have to find the balance. Okay, Katie Woods. My boyfriend does a water fast for 2 days, breaks his fast with a keto meal or 2. Is this bad? How can he improve? I'm excited for this talk. Thanks. Oh, I'm excited too. All right. So water fasting is great. Breaking of water fast with keto, my opinion, would be bad, if you're asking my opinion, which you are. Now, you might go to somebody else and they'd be like, yeah, that's perfect. Do it. I say it's bad. Again, the main fuel source for the body is sugar. The best sugar source for the body is fruit sugar. I did a 40-day water fast. I read books on fasting. The Science and Fine Art of Fasting by Herbert Shelton. Saw 30,000 people do water fasts. He was adamant that you always break a water fast with orange juice and nothing else. You do a water fast and eat an orange or put orange juice in your body, and it's like, you feel like the heavens opened up. You're like, you feel your whole body come alive and all your cells come alive. And I don't know how he feels after he eats a keto meal coming off of a water fast. But if you want to make your cells happy and you want to make your brain happy, come off a fast with fruit. It's hands down the best. And if you read books on fasting, and again, I'm not saying there's not somebody out there promoting ketogenic after fasting. There probably is. But most of the books I've read on fasting always say to break it with juice and fruit. And it makes sense knowing this information. Melody Martin Bradley. How do people eat the rainbow on keto? They don't. That's really bad. Okay? We're a rainbow. God created rainbows. We have fruits and vegetables that looks like a rainbow. You should eat the rainbow. So, ketogenic diet, bad for the rainbow. So, I would say, again, decrease the fat, eat the rainbow, much better. Also, I know good fats are good for us, but it's a diet full of good fat and not much else really good for us. I think we covered that. Short term, it looks good. Long term, it's not good, especially when you start eating other foods, and your body can't metabolize them. Way to look at it is input, output. I've talked a lot about the body being like a factory, supply, demand. The more active you are, the more you get away with fats or carbs. The less active you are, the less you get away with it. If there's too many fats in your system, your body can't metabolize sugars properly. This is insulin resistance. This is diabetes. So if you can get the fat low or out of your diet, and then you eat fruit, or even potatoes, or even rice, your cells can actually utilize them without you being tired. And then if you can throw exercise on top of that, well, then you can get well. So, do you get enough nutrients, vitamins, and minerals on keto? I don't know. I think that's debatable. I think you probably get a decent amount, sure. But if you think about, like you said, the rainbow and vitamins and vitamin C and all these other things that we need, you're certainly not going to get them on the ketogenic diet. You're going to get lots of fat and lots of protein. You probably get minerals and fats and protein, and that's okay, but you're missing a lot of key phytonutrients that come from plants. Remember, God gave us plants. He said every fruit-bearing tree and seed on the planet shall be yours for food. The design was that we would eat fruits and vegetables and some nuts and seeds, obviously, because he gave us those trees too. But you know what? Eat a handful of cashews, because you can buy it from the grocery store, or go out and find a tree. Maybe cashews is a bad example. Let's use a walnut, for example. Okay, try eating 10 walnuts, cracking the nuts open and eating off a tree. What we're doing today is abnormal. The amounts of fat we're eating today is abnormal because of grocery stores. Go back to God's design. Eat the readily, easily available fruits and vegetables and greens. Eat those, because those are the readily available ones. Eat way less of the fats, because they're way harder to come by. They come in these hard shells, and you're going to have to develop tools to break them open, or you're going to have to kill an animal or something. You know what I mean? So it's way harder to get fats, unless maybe you're eating an avocado, right? But in general, I'm just saying, I always want to think of this from just logic of God's design and creation of the human body. And I think if you look at God's design, it very much fits how our body chemistry works and what's best for us. So that was all the questions, unless we had anybody pipe in any questions.
We do have some questions. Becky says hi.
Hi,
Nice
Becky.
to see you live. And then Deanne Evans asks, How do we remove excess fat from our body?
Deanne Evans says, how do we remove excess fat from your body? That's great. So the first step would be to stop eating it so your body can start to flush it out. But one of my favorite concepts in health and healing is heat and movement. Why do we exercise? Heat and movement. Let's say you have a greasy pan. You wash that pan in cold water, right? No. You would never clean your pan. You need heat and soap. Okay? So you need things that emulsify fat, and you need heat. Your fat emulsifiers are things like citrus, lemons, limes, oranges, grapefruit. They emulsify fat. Beets emulsify fat. Apple cider vinegar emulsifies fat. Exercise and heating up the body, getting in a far infrared sauna, sweating, exercise to the point of sweating. Heat and movement removes fat from the human body. And so I hope that answers that. Is that it?
Yeah, next question.
Oh.
What diet would you recommend?
What diet would you recommend? So I don't, in general, if I'm just talking to the general public, we have our Eating by Design program for a reason. It's all about going back to a biblical diet, eating what God originally gave us. Mainly fruits, vegetables, greens is 80+% of our diet. 20% or less should be fats and proteins. And so that would be your chicken, turkey, fish if you want to eat meat. But if you don't eat meat, that's fine because you don't need it. And there's plenty of healthy people out there that don't eat meat. Fat, again, should be 10% or less in my opinion. Not that we don't need them, but we don't need anywhere close to what we're eating. It's really, really long-term detrimental. So I would say like the 80-20 diet, or you can call it the 80-10-10 diet, or whatever you want to call it. But lots of fruits, lots of veggies, lots of greens, and then 10% to 20% of the other stuff. That's in general. Now, it can be different if you have liver gallbladder problems. It can be different if you have yeast, candida, mold issues. It can be different for different people. But that's it generally.
Ryan says, love to know your thoughts on Nora Gedaga's her work and claims. That would be one we'd have to look up.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Ryan. I don't know who that is. But I might look it up just because the name is very intriguing.
Ramiro says, thanks for addressing intermittent fasting. I feel great with it, so wanted some clarity on.
Great.
From an awesome source. Thanks for what you do.
You're welcome. Amen. Praise God.
Carrie Poe Butler says, is it important to eat fruit alone, or can it be combined with something else?
Oh, good question, Carrie. So she said, should we eat fruit alone or with something else? Yeah, and generally fruit is alone. All the time, I mean, I'd say the majority of the time for breakfast with our family, and we have 3 kiddos, we eat fruit. That's it. We just eat fruit. Kids have some mango, kids have an apple. They're perfectly happy. It's all good. So fruit as a snack by itself, as a meal by itself, glorious. If you're going to combine it with anything, I would say you could make a smoothie, but I'm talking like maybe almond milk and maybe some greens. And that's it. You don't want to eat, the worst of the worst, I'm joking, but the worst of the worst is, like eating apple pie. Like you got dairy and sugar and grains and then the fruit. So this is where you create a fermentation mess in your gut. So if you eat fruit with anything, it would just be like greens or like in a smoothie with greens. But in general, yes, fruit, empty stomach is definitely ideal. Are there more?
Yep. Wow. I've been told that if I don't eat meat, I will not receive sufficient iron. What are your thoughts on this?
If I don't eat meat, I will not eat sufficient iron. Okay, so it's false. It's absolutely false. I had a gal in here today who was like craving red meat, and I said, think of it this way: your body needs iron, but it's 1/10 of 1% iron. 1/10 of 1% iron. It only needs a little iron from plants, not a T-bone steak. And so what you're doing is you're overstressing your body. You're getting the iron you need, but that's our mindset and our culture, and that's what doctors say, just eat red meat. You don't need that. It's completely unnecessary. And I kind of made the example earlier comparing us to animals. Like animals out there, they obviously have iron in their bloodstream, and they have oxygen, and they have to produce red blood cells just like we do, and they eat grass, and they eat leaves, and they eat, fruit and leaves off of trees. And so you can get the 0.1% of the human body of iron that you need. Trust me, you can get it from plants. Now, if people have brown eyes, especially liver issues, you're anemic. It's almost a guarantee. So I'm going to recommend a plant-based iron. And so you could do the Blood Builder by Megafood is a great product. The other cool thing is if you look at liver herbs that are good for the liver, a lot of those herbs are very, very good natural iron sources. Yellow dock is a great iron source. My favorite source for iron is actually beets. So eating lots of beets, getting the beet crystals and adding those into your food. Blackstrap molasses is another well-known source of iron. So it's pretty easy to either take in a supplement or get in your foods. You absolutely do not have to eat. Now, I'm not saying you can't, but you don't have to eat meat to get iron. That is definitely a myth.
Is it true that the liver can't properly detox without sufficient protein?
Is it true the liver can't detox without protein? Okay, so that's a little bit tricky just because the body utilizes amino acids in the cells, not protein. So the body has to break down those proteins to utilize and to build and repair healthy tissue and all that. I personally have not heard about the liver having to have protein to detox, but I do know there's specific amino acids that do assist the liver in detox. Like there's products out there that are hot, like liver detox products that contain methionine and different amino acids that help the liver to detox. So I said, yes, there's some truth to that, but you can take like perfect aminos or some type of an amino acid based product, not necessarily have to eat meat or something like that. You can do a plant-based protein like the pea proteins or Vega or those kind of things out there. So yeah, I'm sure there's truth to that. But it's more like the amino acids that we need than necessarily like a high protein content.
Okay, last question
Do
today. Where can I find the eating design and get more information about it?
Oh, thank you. So our website's www.spiritofhealthkc.com. Sorry, I was told you don't have to say www, but I did. So spiritofhealthkc.com. And we have a tab that says cleanses and programs. And if you go to cleanses and programs, you'll see our colon cleanse, kidney cleanse, liver cleanse, lymph cleanse, microbe cleanse, heavy metal cleanse. But there's also the Eating by Design program. It's a 29-day challenge to eat biblically based off of Genesis 1:29, that we go back to eating foods that God designed. Our whole heart is that you get off of the man-made system. I'm not just talking about big pharma and the drugs and the hospitals and the doctors. We want to get away from all that outside of emergencies. But also getting off the food system, the toxic food system, and get onto God's system, because God wants us to be free, and freedom can come through proper stewardship of our bodies and getting back to eating the Garden of Eden. It's an original form, and so that's what I encourage you to do. So check out our Eating by Design program. It's awesome. My wife and I did that when we were in Hawaii. I mean, it's easy to get motivated when you're in Hawaii and you're in the sun and by the ocean and there's like fruit trees everywhere, right? So anyway, so I hope this about the keto has been helpful, beneficial to you. Don't take my word for it. Research it, study it. You're going to get a lot of opinions on both sides of the fence. And so you really need to discern like what's right in your spirit, because too many people I see, well, I'm eating a big breakfast because I was told I have to eat breakfast. It's the most important meal of the day. Or I was told I have to eat meat because I need iron. Or I was told I have to eat a high-fat diet because I'm tired, or whatever. Like, you need to, like, what do you feel in your spirit? Research it and do what makes most sense for you. So thank you. God bless.